Hello, I'm Eric Snodgrass, and thank you for watching today's Ag Forecast brought to you by Nutrien Ag Solutions, your premier platform for real-time global insights. Well, I wanted to start with a map that shows us the last 30 days of temperature anomalies across North America. As the flow pattern became blocked in the North Central Pacific here with a high over low pattern that set up, it allowed for a deeper trough to become established here over parts of the North Central Plains, the Rocky Mountains, and the Canadian prairies. We saw over the weekend that cold air finally making its way all the way to the southeast and up the east coast. And now the trough that was sitting here is slowly migrating here to sit between the Great Lakes and the Hudson Bay. And some of the questions we're going to be asking ourselves and trying to answer this week is how long will that upper level trough sit in that area? Because it will be one that dictates our temperature and pressure and precipitation patterns. As long as it's sitting in that place, it will keep things cool, possibly even wet as well. So we have a lot to be discussing and talking about this week, but let's first go right over to what we got over the last 7 days in terms of precipitation. Now, with the storm system that finally exited, on November the 1st, so it was basically our Halloween storm system. It not only brought snow to parts of, right in through this area, but also in through here, over 400 reports of severe weather. We added a lot to the rainfall, which had been quite wet throughout the month of October, working its way up the northeast. But there will be sections down here, which it was, in the drought-parched regions of the southeast that may now have their wettest October on record. We're going to have to wait to see when the data come out later this week if we broke those records. And also in the north central plains, I know it was dry, relatively dry over the last 7 days, but remember this region was hit hard earlier in the month with not only big snows, but a lot of rain, and it will likely have a top 5 wettest in that area as well. So where it's been dry has been along the west coast of the United States, and we need to be bringing precipitation into this area because it is now the beginning of the wet season, and we've started off on a drier note here. We're going to see if that is forecast to stick around for the next couple of weeks here in a few moments. Well, after the October 31st, November 1st system cleared its way out, behind it with some of the cooler air, we did see kind of working its way right in through this corridor. We did see some light snow, and we also saw some pretty chilly rain that moved through parts of the western and northern Corn Belt. But notice this as well. Because of that northwest flow, look at what we're getting here on the downwind side of our Great Lakes. That's right, some lake-enhanced precipitation. We're going to talk about it. We're going to see more of that here in the near term. But many of us meteorologists were kind of treated to some of the GFS antics over the weekend. And what I'm showing you here is one of the weekend model runs projecting this massive low-pressure system that was going to be sitting here over Lake Superior. On my 500 millibar height anomaly map, you can see that we went off the color bar here with how deep this was going to be. And near the surface, it was going to be producing a low-pressure center that was not only going to produce a big severe weather outbreak to its south right in through here, but it was going to have so much cold air on the back side of it. Look at how far to the south the snow was going to extend. And all within the circle that I'm drawing here, this particular storm system was forecast by the GFS to produce hurricane force winds, all right? Now, here's the thing. This was just the GFS all the way out in a 10-day forecast who went off on this highly anomalous track. And so this is no longer in the works. It's not something that's going to be there. But I at least had to bring it up because when we see these big winter storm systems in November going right over the top of Lake Superior, well, if something like this would have formed, this would have been something that I think Gordon Lightfoot could have written another song about. If you've never heard his song, The Wreck of the Edmund Fitzgerald, it's one of my favorite. I think a lot of us meteorologists love this song because it's a great ballad about a powerful storm system that went through and sunk the ship that you see over there on the right. So had the GFS been right on this one, I think he could have written a kind of a second part to that song. But thankfully, that's no longer in the works. What is in the works is this kinked up flow pattern that we see over here in the Gulf of Alaska. You see, it straightens things out once it gets here between, again, the Great Lakes and the Hudson Bay, where this deeper trough is established. But the pattern you see there in the Gulf of Alaska is one that's going to keep the west coast dry and warm until we can get the jet stream to really just come screaming through in a more zonal fashion to break this pattern down. And the problem is I don't see that happening anytime soon. So for us here across North America, we're going to have to be watching what's going on in the Gulf of Alaska, but also a couple of subtle features that are sitting right here off of the Baja of California. Because as these two features get pulled into the jet stream flow, well, it could make for some very wet conditions in here in the near term. But certainly with this deeper low sitting here in the upper levels, we're going to see cold fronts sweeping through a big section of the eastern half of the United States. And again, how long does this last? We're going to take a quick stab at that in this video. Okay, all hazards weather map. Well, last night I flew out here to Portland, Oregon, and then drove with an Uber driver down to Salem, which is about right here. And it was interesting because as we were driving along, things were starting to get hazy and looked a little cloudy, a little foggy at the surface. Now, I knew there was air stagnation warnings for the Pacific Northwest, and we saw it just a moment ago on that upper level flow pattern. But my driver tried to convince me that all of the haze and smoke that he was seeing was because of all the people smoking marijuana. And I just didn't have the heart to correct him. It was just kind of a funny part of my evening. Meanwhile, we are still dealing with colder than average weather that's still snaking here across parts of the Carolinas. So some freeze watch and freeze warnings out in that area. But thankfully, overall, the map is less colorful. Please don't miss out, though, on the regions we are still seeing a lot of flooding on our major river systems, and that is coming right down the heart of the country here. Sometimes it's harder to see those particular features. Now, our forecast over the next 5 days, I think, is well put in this map. With that deeper trough sitting here, we're just going to watch a sequence of fronts that kind of come sneaking through this area, each one having the potential to produce some precipitation. Meanwhile, temperatures are rebounding up the west coast of North America here as the pattern really stays highly amplified in the near term. So let's just kind of take a look at what our high-resolution NAM model is picking up on. That was the overnight and early morning showers we see here as we get through the day on Monday, early morning on Monday, moving through Wisconsin and into Michigan. But you'll see the first front coming through such that in the overnight hours on Monday night getting into Tuesday morning, the main frontal boundary stretch right in through here. So we will see throughout the day scattered showers that move through parts of Michigan and then eventually over here into the eastern Corn Belt and up into the northeast. And that boundary lingers right in through there. Now you'll notice that behind this, higher atmospheric pressure builds in here. That's the cold shot that comes in behind this, such that by Tuesday afternoon and evening, we've got that cold air really established in this area. And then you can see the lighter snow showers that come in from Montana through parts of the Dakotas, but really over into Minnesota and Wisconsin as we work our way into Wednesday morning. That eventually spreads over into parts of both the UP and lower Michigan as we get throughout the morning hours on Wednesday. So that's our near term. That's what we're really watching. Now, as we stretch this out, we got the next 5 days from the GFS on the left and the European model on the right. Both are keyed in on the snowier pattern that's moving down here through parts of Montana coming through the northern Rockies. Both of them pick up on the enhanced precipitation in this area. There's the GFS, and over here's the European. And they both are picking up on this feature right in through here. But there's a difference when you look to the south of that area. You can see down here from basically eastern Texas getting all the way over to South Carolina, much wetter in the GFS than it is in the European. And one of the reasons is that trough that you saw me talking about, well, the GFS allows it to dig farther to the south as it comes here through the southern part of the United States, whereas the European model flattens it out and takes it off the coast sooner. So two entirely different scenarios here. One thing we do see is that all of this kind of meets in the northeastern part of the United States. We're going to be seeing some snow in through this area. We're going to need to talk about how much we could possibly be getting here from parts of West Virginia and Ohio through Pennsylvania and New York as we move in toward the middle and end of this week. So let's just switch this over to the operational European model and pause it right here, which is where we got to on our previous animation. We're going to be watching here in the overnight hours on Tuesday getting into Wednesday morning for a region right here through southern Minnesota and Wisconsin, getting over into Michigan here for the chance for some lighter snowfall amounts. We'll take a look at how much in a few moments. But what I want you to notice is there are three things coming together at this point in this map. Watch this high pressure cell, this high pressure cell, and it's hard to see, but the little shortwave trough is now sitting here. High pressure cell number 2 pushing up against the Rocky Mountains. That's where you get some snow in Montana. High pressure cell number 1 is about to help return moisture on the back side of this, such that once we get past Wednesday evening, getting into Thursday morning, look at what we've got setting up. See, the European model brings a shortwave right in through here. This high pressure cell is pumping moisture around it into that boundary, and the boundary is being pushed south by this high pressure cell. So we're kind of just getting the atmosphere to spin and collide in this area. Now, with the advancement of this high, we will be bringing in enough cold air that we're going to have to watch for the chance for widely scattered snow showers here on the back side of the main frontal boundary. So you can see it right into there. So possibly in Illinois, Indiana, and Ohio, maybe even getting back over toward the St. Louis area. Again, this is Thursday afternoon, Thursday evening. We can see that broad area precipitation now stretching here up into parts of where there's snow falling in parts of Ohio, Pennsylvania, and New York. And there should be enough cold air on the backside of that to make that snow a reality. Again, I'm going to show you how much in just a few moments. We can then see that by Friday morning, yes, the high pressure cell is now pushing back into parts of Iowa, Missouri, Illinois, and shoving that cold air again to the south. Very windy conditions on the southeast side and on the northwest side of this high pressure cell. And it occupies much of the eastern Corn Belt as we start the weekend. Now you're going to notice as I get into the weekend here, this is the operational European run, that it's trying to produce another low pressure system sitting somewhere here north of the Great Lakes. Now we do not have the timing or position down on this at all, but we're just watching the little lobes of vorticity spin around that deeper upper level trough, and it means that things like this are more frequent. They can happen more often just because of the position of that upper level low. But we need to look at it a little bit differently, okay? First, I want to talk about that snow. These are the operational 0Z GFS snowfall amounts. Now again, we're looking for placement here, not necessarily numbers. I'll give you numbers in a second. So certainly pushing up against the Rocky Mountains, some upslope flow there, picking up anywhere between 2 to 5 inches here in the U.S. Up in Alberta, considerably more. With the frontal boundaries that keep sneaking through this corridor, there is the possibility right in through here of us picking up 2 to 3, maybe 4 inches of snow. The European ensemble says that that region right in through there has about a 40 to 50% chance of picking up 3 inches. But you do see that the operational kind of is painting this corridor in through here as the best chance at getting some snow up the East Coast. And you can see that the probability within that range of grabbing 3 inches is much higher than it is than there in southern Wisconsin and Minnesota. All right. Also notice this, with the cold air coming around that trough, we're starting to now see the lake effect snow getting going here on the downwind side of all of our Great Lakes. So that's another thing we're to be watching out for here in the Great Lakes states. Just to show you the GFS for completeness, we see that it's got a very similar picture painted. Again, about a 40 to 60% chance here, with some local areas in here seeing a much higher chance of getting snow. Again, that's enhanced by the lakes here in the northeast. So that's what our snow looks like. Now, why I didn't show you much beyond the first week here in the forecast models is there's major model discrepancy going to week 2, both between the GFS and the European, but also between the operational models and their ensembles. Here's one glaring example of this. Getting out to Monday, the 11th, what we see here in the ECMWF, which is over on the right, is a very, very deep trough in this area that would likely be producing a very powerful East Coast cyclone that runs up like this. The GFS has a much weaker, more open wave, with the main trough feature sitting again up here in the Canadian Maritimes back over to the Hudson Bay. And the difference is startling. One model, I'll put an X over here in the European, wants to produce a massive cyclone. The GFS wants nothing of it. Now, what they do agree on is the presence of this ridge out west, and that's going to continue to keep things dry in that area. Take a look. Week 2 anomalies here from the GFS on the left, European on the right. Does keep this area dry again. But notice the GFS wants to keep this all wetter with that broader, more open wave coming down, pushing through, than the European, which wants to advance this and bring a big cyclone right up here along the East Coast as we get deep into week 2. So we've got a lot to be watching this week in the forecast pattern that's going to be evolving for next week. Good news is I am seeing a push of moisture here toward the western United States, which means that we could be, by the time we get past the 13th, 14th time frame, finally bringing in some much needed moisture to the northwest. But while all of that was going on, this is what's happening at the base of the stratosphere. We have seen our polar vortex begin to elongate. It looks as though it's being kind of stressed in its position a little bit. In the animation you just saw over there on the left, well, we can start to see that higher pressure settling in on either side of the polar vortex, stretching it out in this direction. And if it looks something like this, This is something where we continue to set up a lot of cold air here in western parts of North America, really western and central, and that allows that cold air to continually be pushed into the eastern 2/3 of the United States. So this does not bode well for the pattern breaking down anytime soon. Okay, from there, let's just take a look at what our temperature anomalies do. I'm going to start you off on days 6 through 10. At this point, our trough is well established and much colder air keeps coming in, both the European and the GFS in great agreement here. Warming up the west coast, cooling down here on the other side of the mountains. Taking you out to the 11 to 15 day time period, this gets us all the way to the 19th of this month. Look at how widespread the warmth is here across the western parts of North America in both models here, while the colder air hangs on. And at this point, we don't see this going anywhere, even through the third week of the month of November. Again, a lot of a reaction here to the low sea ice content in the North Pacific here, up in the Chukchi Sea, and also the positive phase of the PDO. Add to all of that, this is what's going on in South America. Now, this is kind of neat. What's going on in South America is we're going to be seeing high pressure cells repeatedly hitting this area. Now, remember, the air flows this direction on high pressure cells in south of the equator. And as a result, we're going to be enhancing the convergence into this area, both from a low-level jet that's a part of the monsoon and this high-pressure cell really increasing precipitation. That's going to hit parts of Goiás, Minas Gerais. It's going to hit, Rio Grande do Sul, Paraná. It's also going to be hitting Mato Grosso and Mato Grosso do Sul. So this is shaping up to be a wetter week for all but maybe the region over here in like Bahia, and then getting farther to the east. So both models are in agreement about that. What's interesting is this high pressure cell I just pointed to here is outdoing what's going on in the Central Pacific. And this is some of the big things we're going to be talking about in this week's long range update. You see, the MJO seems to be on the move as the Indian Ocean dipole event we've been talking about for so many weeks now is slowly starting to weaken. So we'll cover it all, put it all in our forecast videos this week, but focus on this in our Wednesday midday long range forecast. I can't wait to give it to you. Have a great week, and we'll talk to you again soon. Thank you.